So there is a new guy in town.
Oh, yeah, we were just talking about
This guy
this.
right behind me. If you're listening on the podcast, this isn't going to help. But this guy right behind me,
He's gone.
Dennis Francione,
Yeah.
is enjoying retirement. And Texas State has been looking for a coach for the past 2-3 weeks. And yesterday, it was announced that they found one. And it's a guy, we kicked around a lot of names earlier this week. This was not a guy whose name we kicked around.
No.
It was not. The new head coach of the Texas State Bobcats, Everett Withers.
Yes.
Everett Withers, who is coming from James Madison.
James Madison fame.
James Madison, he's the head Duke there.
Fresh off getting them a game day appearance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. They were on game day. But Everett Withers is the new head coach of the Texas State Bobcats. A couple of noteworthy things here. First of all, he does have some Texas ties, albeit pretty limited Texas ties. He was an assistant under Mac Brown from 1998 to 2000.
Well, that kind of makes him have as many Texas ties as Tom Herman. So,
That's true.
Stint at Texas, and
That's
that was
true.
about it.
So you imagine that he's going to go and fill out his staff with some Texans.
Obviously, I have just now said that Everett Withers will be as good as Tom Herman.
There you go. That's what that means.
Congratulations, Texas State.
So I'll be entirely honest. When this news broke yesterday, I was pretty unfamiliar with Everett Withers. I didn't really know a whole ton about him.
Yeah.
I knew that he was at James Madison, but really that's the only thing I knew about him. So after doing some research on him, a little bit of research, here's my overall view on who Everett Withers is. First and foremost, he's a winner. He has won
Hard to argue
everywhere
there. Yeah.
he's been.
Track record's awesome.
He was the defensive coordinator at Austin Peay. That was his first job, kind of at the Division II level. He's bounced around a number of places, all in the Southeast. I'll mention, Tulane, Southern Miss. He was with the Saints for a little bit. He was at Louisville. He was Louisville's defensive coordinator for a couple years in the '90s. He was at Texas. He was at Minnesota, North Carolina. In fact, his only head coaching job previous to James Madison was when he took the job at North Carolina, and he took the job at North Carolina because after Butch Davis was fired, there was the whole scandal. He was actually involved in that scandal a little bit, but he was slapped on the wrist as opposed to fired.
Yeah.
He is, but he's won everywhere he's went. If you look at what he did at James Madison, 19-7 as the James Madison head coach. And I know that we're talking about the FCS level, but I still think it's relevant that he's a winner. He's a guy who's got a reputation for being pretty fiery, a guy that the players love, guys that players like to play for. He is black. I think that it's worth noting that I mentioned this on Twitter for the first time in the state of Texas history. There are 3 black FBS coaches in the state of Texas. And somebody brought up to me, a friend of mine who's a Kansas State fan brought up to me and goes, I imagine that would be the first time in any state. And I don't know if that's true.
I mean, that's fair because we've got so many
There's 12.
programs.
Now there's 12.
Yeah, right.
Really, you could only look at California, Florida maybe,
with enough FBS teams to be in this conversation
conversation. But this may be, in fact, and I want to do a little bit more research before I put my foot in my mouth, but this may be the first time that there's been 3 black FBS head coaches in a state at any one time, which is neat in a time when there has been black coaches have been few and far between. Here in the state of Texas, a full quarter of them now, which is interesting. If you're looking as far as a style is concerned, this is a decidedly defensive coach. He is a guy who is a defensive guy. He's been a defensive assistant pretty much everywhere he's gone. I think he's only had one offensive position, and that was when he was the wide receivers and special teams coach at Austin Peay 25 years ago. So he's a decidedly defensive coach. He went to Appalachian State, where he was a defender, and this is a guy who, we may be burying the lead here. He was the defensive coordinator at Ohio State before taking the job of James Madison.
Yeah.
He is a defensive guy, And so and what's funny is that when you look across the state at the program, the FBS programs across the state, how many defensive coaches are the head coaches?
That's the thing we were talking about the other day. Coordinators just don't. Defensive coordinators, defensive coaches just do not get the same kind of opportunities right now that offensive coaches do. So it says a lot when a guy with this track record has kept climbing.
I mean, right now, who are the defensive coaches who are FBS coaches? Gary Patterson.
Oh, in the state?
In the state.
Oh, yeah.
Gary Patterson.
I guess.
Kingsbury's not. Chad Morris is not.
I think out at UTEP, right?
Kugler was an offensive line guy.
Well, but
he likes defense, but he's an offensive guy. He's an offensive scheme guy.
Yeah, I guess
Charlie
right.
Strong is a defensive guy.
Yeah.
But aside from those guys, unless I'm just really blanking on one, Larry Coker was kind of a defensive guy, but he's obviously no longer with us. No, he didn't die. He's no longer the head coach. I mean, even Seth Luttrell, the new guy at North Texas, is an offensive guy. This is in the state right now. There are a bevy of offensive coaches, a slew of them.
Yeah.
There are not many defensive coaches, but Texas State has now gone in a defensive direction, which maybe gives them a recruiting edge. Mm-hmm. That when you're talking about, if you want to go play for Baylor, you want to go play for Tech, or you want to go play for, Houston, or you want to go play for these guys, the allure largely is, hey, this head coach is an offensive guy.
Right.
He's an offensive guy. We score and score and score and score.
Yeah. It's going to be fun to play here.
Not so now at Texas State, where they're saying, hey, listen, you want to come and be a part of a lockdown defense? Come be a part of us.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there's a strategic advantage there. I'm interested to see how he fills out his staff. As I mentioned, he doesn't have a ton of Texas ties. He needs to do get on the trail, getting to know the Texas high school football coaches.
Yeah.
Because Fran, from back in his A&M days,
right,
and back in his TCU days, had a long, long history with Texas high school football coaches.
Yeah.
He needs to get in there and bring in some heavy-hitting coaches in the Texas high school football ranks to be a part of his staff to help him in their recruiting. I think that this was probably the latest that they could make a hire that it wouldn't affect signing day.
Yeah.
It's still going to have some effect.
Oh, absolutely.
But this was probably at the buzzer as far as having a real big effect, because from here on out, and we mentioned this with UTSA's opening yesterday, every day that goes by is going to be a detriment to the 2016 class.
Yes.
For UTSA. Texas State has stopped the bleeding, because now anybody that they know, now they may still lose some recruits who don't want to go play for Everett Withers. That may be the case.
Yeah.
But I think that they stopped the bleeding at that point and said, okay, we can, we've got a guy. The other thing about it is that I don't think that this is a stop along the way for Everett Withers. I think, based on his career trajectory,
right,
barring him going basically leading them to like 4 straight conference titles.
Right.
I think that he views this as kind of a destination type job.
Sure.
I mean, he's 52. He's not a young guy.
Right.
I mean, he's not old, but he's not a young guy. He's not your Cliff Kingsbury whippersnapper,
Mm-hmm.
Seth Luttrell, real young guys.
Right.
He's got a little bit of, he's got some experience behind him. I think he views this, getting back to the FBS level, I think he could be here for the long haul. And I think that's what Texas State was looking for. They were looking for stability. Dennis Franchione, fair or not, probably viewed Texas State from the outset as his swan song. He's like, you know what? I'm going to go here, be the head coach at Texas State,
sure,
bring them into the FBS league, and then when I'm done there, or when they get tired of me or whatever, I'm just done.
Yeah.
This is probably not the case for Everett Withers, but kind of in the similar fashion. I don't think he's looking at this as a stepping stone to going on to a bigger job. My feel for it, and my feel for his career trajectory, is that he views this kind of as a destination, which is good, which is ultimately good for Texas State.
Do you think that makes him a better hire than, say, Doug Meacham, who reportedly turned it down?
It's a different hire than Doug Meacham. Obviously, it's a different hire in a lot of different ways. Right. You're going from a pure offensive guy to a pure defensive guy, you're going from a guy who does have some head coaching experience versus in Withers versus a guy in Meacham who has no head coaching experience. But Meacham does have Texas ties versus Withers doesn't. And he has the bigger quote-unquote name, the bigger job. Being the head coach, being the offensive coordinator at TCU versus being the head coach at James Madison are two different realms here. So, ultimately, in the end, and I've been thinking this through, ultimately, I like it. I like the hire. I think that it's a guy who can fire up the fan base. I think that he's a guy who is going to kind of gets at a strategic in Moneyball, they called them market inefficiencies.
Yes.
That there's not a whole lot of people going after defensive guys. There's not a lot of defensive-minded coaches in the state. Here is one coming in and saying, you know what, we're going to be a defensive team. I think, and he's a winner. You get back to the bottom line, the headline of this thing is that Everett Withers is a winner.
Yeah.
And I think that's ultimately what drew Texas State to him. Is he's a guy who wins. Wherever he's gone, he's been a winner. Even in his 1 year at North Carolina, with a program that was in shambles, he took them to a bowl. And I think that is a promising development for Texas State. Exciting to see him here. He's obviously a little bit busy. I've already emailed with Texas State, hoping to get him on the show here pretty soon. Maybe it's the kiss of death. We've had 2 FBS coaches on the show, and one of them's gone. Larry Coker. Seth Luttrell, still holding strong.
Got to get him early. Got to get him early to pull
so we're hoping to get
off, I guess.
Everett Withers. So I think it's a time for celebration at Texas State. This is a good hire, and I think that he's going to win at Texas State. So that is interesting. There's now only 1 FBS opening left in the state of Texas, although obviously a lot of position coaches and assistants on the Texas State job still open. But only 1 opening now, and it's UTSA. So UTSA, you're on the clock.
Going to be fascinating to see what they do.
It will be. It will be very interesting.